What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I invite you once again to grab a delicious and cold or hot beverage, a crunchy snack, and a soft chair. And let me talk at you for a minute. Today, I would like to talk to you about my new obsession of a game. Rumbleslam. So Rumbleslam is to wrestling what Blood Bowl is to American football. Still waiting on somebody to make like a European football, like a soccer war game. That's the one I want. Because I'm going to paint them in Arsenal colors. But anyways, that's a digression. That's not what we're here to talk about. Rumbleslam. Rumbleslam usually consists of teams of about 4 to 5 models is what I've seen mostly. And each of those teams represents one of the various casinos that are scattered around the land. I'm assuming this is TT Combat, not Mantic. Never mind, I retract what I was about to say. So this is just kind of a universe that TT Combat has made up. Now, first impressions, as always, generally relate to the art, which is great. We have some really good model photography that showcases a lot of the models in the line. There are a large number, like more than a few, old school wrestling cameos, like Easter egg kind of things. And that makes me so joyous because I don't keep up with wrestling a lot in the modern era, but when I was a kid, man, I was all about it. And so we got, like Randy Savage is in here. Yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage is in here. There's a Hulk Hogan model who is actually an orc. Just lots of good. There's a Rowdy Roddy Piper. Just lots of small little pop culture references or wrestling references, and that brings me such enormous joy. The casinos are Kaiser's Palace, Gomorrah, the Rolling Bones, the Forest Soul, and the Feral Den. So there are 5 different casinos in this book, and they could have added more since then. I'm not entirely sure. And that kind of gives us the backstory of the game. It's not a whole bunch of lore because I don't need a whole bunch of lore. I will do just fine with creating dialogues among the wrestlers as I play, and I'm really looking forward to that kind of off the books fun, of doing wrestler voices and like plot lines and backstabs and double crosses and stuff, just to play around with that in my own headcanon. As we get into like the actual backbone of the game, we open up, as many books do, with a view of the stat cards. And then, of course, the itemized reference of what each part of the stat card does. Now, you may notice that on this part, there's not a lot of numbers. It's mostly just dice. So after we flip over from that card page, we arrive at the conversation of dice. Now, the dice are D6s, but they are proprietary D6s. Some of them have blank faces. They're copper, silver, and gold are the 3 colors. Each color has a better chance of success, so it'll have potentially higher numbers on the faces as well as fewer blank faces, which the blank faces are a score of 0. When you're rolling the dice, if it's higher than your opponent's, it's a success. If it's not, it's a failure. And each of your actions will kind of detail a little bit what happens on a failure or success. But there are opposed rolls in the game as well as, I think, just static rolls. There are things that will allow you to re-roll, but as with minigames, you may never re-roll a re-roll. Wrestlers come on one of 2 base sizes. In the game, the models come with clear acrylic square bases, either in 25 millimeters or 50 millimeters. And those are the only 2 base sizes. I think the clear bases I've never used or played with clear bases before, but I think it's going to be good here because it will allow you to see the texture of the mat underneath, and it prevents me from having to come up with some kind of way to recreate the mat texture, which I had some ideas brewing for how to do that, but they would have been a lot more work than I really wanted to put into the models. So, yeah. The ring that you play in is a squared ring, of course. It's a wrestling ring. It is 104 squares total. And it's already gridded off for you and everything. It makes that aspect easier, but it's not like an actual grid. It's kind of got points. Now, we have the MDF ring that TT Combat sells. I've not laid eyes on it yet in person, but from what I understand, it's pretty freaking sweet. But at the same time, if you don't want to buy that, again, you can check out the unboxing video that I did for the whole thing, for the starter box. And the neoprene mat that comes in that is very nice. So it's a cool thing, but it's definitely not a mandatory thing. You can also just make your own ring as long as you make sure that it has that number of squares in it. That would be perfectly acceptable as well. The game does use several counters, which come in the starter box, but if you are watching this video, you probably play other small indie games and probably have somewhere within your collection tokens that you could absolutely make work for this game. If I did not have access to the starter box, I have a generic set of colored tokens that I use for almost every game that I play. So it's nice to have them. It is not mandatory but it does tell you and show you, what they are so that you can make your own representations of them if you so choose. When you set up the game to play, your first step is to determine who's going to deploy and pick their corner first, which is to roll a gold dice, and whoever scores the lowest picks a turnbuckle, and you place all of your wrestlers within 5 squares of that turnbuckle, not on top of it, and in base contact with the rope, so kind of in an L kind of corner, so kind of probably your big guy anchored in and the smaller guys coming out. Then your opponent does the same thing in the opposite corner. Now with this, I'm not really sure. Now I haven't really gotten to play the game yet, so I'm not exactly sure how important that is, but it's good to have a procedure laid out for such things. I don't know that it would matter. I don't know if there's, like with some games, there is potential strategic knowledge that can be gained from deploying second and then being able to counter deploy. But when you're both just kind of going in a corner, I don't know how important that is. But we do it nonetheless. I'm just making commentary on the topic. Now let's say that you're playing a team of wrestlers and with the dosh provided or allowed, you have more models than you can fit in that radius of the corner or in that distance of the corner. Well, you can put them on the sidelines, and at the beginning of the round, before you roll for initiative, you can try to bring one of them in, and if you get it, they'll hop in the ring. Pretty straightforward. So you can potentially have, like, these are big old brawls. You can have a lot going on, a lot of things going on, a lot of people moving around this ring. You also get the opportunity to steal the initiative game. And to begin with, it goes to the player that placed their wrestler first. But the players can roll on the deck stat of a wrestler. So to start it off, you can potentially, the person who has that initiative isn't necessarily going to activate first. There is a bit of a roll-off still to determine that. So you both choose a wrestler, and you roll their deck stat against each other. And whoever scores the highest can then take the initiative and activate that wrestler. If it's a tie, the person who already had the card is the winner. They activate first. But either way, whichever model you nominated has to be the first wrestler that you activate. Has to be. It's mandatory. And once you've got that sorted out, it's time to activate a wrestler. Now, activating a wrestler in this game involves 2 very important numbers. MP and AP, which represent movement points and action points. Those 2 numbers can be found. They can be found right here on the card. AP with the star, movement with the arrow. In an activation, a wrestler does not have to spend all of their MP or their AP. You can spend as much or as little of it as you choose. With your movement, you can move 1 square per movement point that you spend. Now, there are some things such as bouncing off the ropes or jumping off of turnbuckles that allow you to move without spending your movement points. but those instances are specifically listed in the thing that you are doing. So and again, you don't have to use all of it. Now, action, an action point is a very, very broad like the Mississippi in this game. It covers everything from suplexing somebody to a Hurricane Rana to a double kick belly flop off the top turnbuckle. It's anything and everything that involves your wrestler that is not moving around. And the section on all the various things that you can do is fairly extensive. There's a lot of cool moments that are going to be created by playing this game, where you're just I'm so excited about this. It's just from reading. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get there. We're going to discuss those things. Now, as with real wrestling, there are some things, some actions that are considered dirty. When you commit a dirty action, which the action will let you know to do it, they're very good about filling that in, you must first roll a crowd dice. And if that comes back as a cheer or a blank, you may proceed with the action. However, if it comes back as a boo, your action does not happen. And you get a -1 AP counter, and their action ends immediately. If you commit 2 or more dirty actions, the same things apply, but you roll 2 crowd dice instead. And if either one of them is a boo, then it's -1 AP, and activation ends immediately. Now, there are some just default broad across the board things that are considered dirty, such as performing the same action 3 or more times in a single activation, or attempting to throw a wrestler who isn't KO'd, or tripping a wrestler. Both count as dirty actions. And I believe there's a few others, but like I said, they list them in the action section, or under the briefing, the snippet about the action, so you know to do it. They're very good. It's very procedural. Just do this, and I very, very much like that about it. If you become knocked down, you receive a knockdown counter, obviously, or you can lay the model down, that will be my path, because it's more cinematic. It looks cooler to have the model actually laid down. It's also easier for my brain to keep up with it that way. So stamina in this game represents your health. And if your stamina is ever reduced to 0, you are KO'd. You flip them over face down, and they're still there. They still occupy that space, but they're flipped over, and they can't do anything. However, at the beginning of a KO'd wrestler's activation, that player can roll a crowd die, and if they get a cheer, they're no longer KO'd. They have 1 stamina, but they're still knocked down. But that's that kind of, the Hulk getting knocked down. He's getting up. And that's kind of one of those first instances that as I was reading through this, of those moments, you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what would happen in wrestling. And then right before we get into the broad list of actions that you can perform, there's a thing called beatdowns and reversals, and I love this. And it's, if you're ever attacking someone and your dice roll is 4 or more higher than them, you beat them down. Like, it's just extra, just chop, chop, chop. However, if the defender beats the attacker by 4 or more, they do a reversal, and for that there is a chart. There's 2 charts actually, 1 for each. There are 2 charts actually, 1 for each of them. And depending on the difference in the 2 numbers, that tells you which beatdown or which reversal you do. And I think that's awesome. Because again, it brings in some of that wrestling flair of they're charging at you and you've just been getting whooped, and then all of a sudden you catch that arm, and then you boom and you come across, and then you hit them with that kick to the gut and they bend over, and then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, stunner, get some. Then we move into actions proper. Now, I am not going to read what every single action does, but I am going to read through the list of actions because the majority of the book is actions. So you can brawl, you can grapple, you can trip, you can pin, you can bounce off the rope, You can do a rope attack. You can do a rope a no, not really. That's not in the book, but I felt the need to say it. You can do a rope ability, which is a special ability that your particular model might have for coming off the ropes. You can bounce someone else off the ropes. You can throw some, like kind of push somebody into the ropes. You can climb a turnbuckle. You can dismount the turnbuckle. You can do a turnbuckle attack if your character has one. There are some turnbuckle abilities. You can also smash somebody against the turnbuckle. You can lift somebody up. You can throw them. There's a thing called live ammunition. You can throw them out of the ring. You can throw a KO'd wrestler out of the ring. You can throw a wrestler onto the turnbuckle. You can throw against the ropes or turnbuckle. And then we come into a couple of explanation type things, which are crowd pleasers, which cost various APs, and sometimes you are forced to perform a crowd pleaser. Again, if you have to do that, it will be listed in the action that you are doing. TT Combat, you guys did a great thing with that. That was laid out beautifully. You get heal, which if you're not familiar with wrestling, a heel in wrestling is the bad guy. So you could do something like bad guy to provoke the crowd, you know, because you feed off their hate and their anger, and you want that for yourself. You want them to suffer and to hate you. I'd be such a good heel. There are active abilities, which cost various things, passive abilities, and choice abilities. And it gives you some icons for what those things look like for when you see that pictograph on your card. We then come to the list of special rules and conditions. Again, I'm not going to read what all of these do. I'm just going to read through them. And most of these are things that are going to be mentioned in the action or ability that you are performing. Things such as plus or minus AP, plus or minus MP, those are obvious. Bleeding, bounce back, X, crowd. Crowd is one that you'll see on several abilities. Dazed, devastating, dirty, fury, impact. Impact is the one, especially if you have bigger models, that all weight 3 wrestlers have that special rule default, so that's one that you may see a lot of. Jump, knockdown, lifted, rocket, shove, X, throw, X. Then we come into our section on building your team of wrestlers. The first step of list building is to discuss with your opponent and come to an agreed upon DOS rating. DOS is the currency of the game. And there are no restrictions on what wrestlers you can bring. So you can bring wrestlers from, just pick your favorites and play them. However, if all of your wrestlers are from the same casino, you will receive bonuses. So there is an incentive to hire everyone from the same casino, but it is not required. So you could absolutely just have some crazy combinations of, oh man, my brain is just, that's imagination fuel for days. We then come into game size, where this kind of elaborates more. It says that you can absolutely select any game size that you want to with your opponent. But it gives you some kind of recommendations for game sizes, and then gives you some estimates about how long those games should take. Now, as with all games, and I feel like this is something that some people might not consider, is that those times are take into consideration that you have a familiarity with the rules. So your first few games are going to take quite a bit longer probably than what it says the average game time is. Just keep that in mind with any game that you look at. A lightweight bout is 1 million dosh, should take about 30 minutes. A middleweight match is 1.5 million dosh, should take about 45 minutes. And a Rumbleslam Madness is 2.5 million dosh. Should take about 90 minutes. So there's a big jump in there. So obviously you can play in at 2 million, and it should probably take somewhere between an hour and 15 minutes. Something like that would be my guess. And again, with hiring your wrestlers, there is no limit to how many or how few you have. Now, all wrestlers are split into 2 groups. They are either rookies or they are superstars. If they're rookies, they will have a white star next to their name. If they're superstars, they will have a gold star next to their name. With rookies, you can have as many of the same rookie as you want. But it is advisable to mix it up a little bit because of getting a wide variety of skills in the ring. Superstars, however, you can only have one of each superstar. Now, there is no limit to how many different superstars you can take, but they are very expensive and would potentially limit your ability in the ring because you would have less models, fewer skills, things like that. Now, that rule of there can be only one, the Highlander rule only applies to your team. So, for example, if you have a Macho Man model and they have a Macho Man model, they don't cancel each other out. It's not like the old Legends rule in Magic. But obviously, one of them is an imposter, and we've got to reveal that through the match. So that's another one of those kind of wrestling trope storytelling moments that I think are going to be one of the big highlights of this game for me. Now, there is another option besides rookies and superstars that matter. Those are tag teams. And there are two ways to hire a tag team. You can hire them as an exhibition or as a traditional. If you hire them as an exhibition, you pay their cost. You can hire one or both. They do tend to work better as a pair, but you have the option to take one, and they can both be in the ring at the same time. The other option, traditional tag team, which is something that sounds fun to me as just a game mode, is exactly what it sounds like. You hire them both. You do get a discount on them one time, 150k DOS reduction to their cost, but they work like a tag team. Like only one of them can be in a ring at a time, and the other one can't get in the ring unless that one is thrown out from the ring or unless they do perform a special tag out option, which is they have to be in their corner, I believe, and in base contact with a rope, any rope, and 2 AP, and then you swap the two models out and continue on with the battle. But you can only do that once per round. So we come into endorsements and sponsorship. So endorsements are like buffs, items that can be used. Things like a Manamanium Muscle Maker, or an Alchemist Guild's Protein Potion, or a Woodland Wonder Sprite steroids that were prescribed by a doctor. Don't worry, this is all on the up and up. Or Snorri's Stone Skin supplements. Those cost 25k each, and you can purchase up to 8 of them. Sponsorship bonuses can be purchased for 50k, as long as, for 50k. You can buy one for 50k regardless of your composition, or if your team is made up of all wrestlers from one casino, or all wrestlers from one casino and any number of free agents, then you get one for free. They are once per use things that you can use from the second round onward, and you have to declare that you are using it at the beginning before the initiative of the round. They're things like Phoenix Fizz, Orca Cola, Torin Tacos, and Eagle Airways. Fly better. We then come into one of my favorite things in a book, a quick reference, and this one is pretty thorough. It gives you all of your actions, it gives you your beatdown and your reversals. Pretty, maybe not all your actions, but it gives you the basic ones, things like ropes, turnbuckles, lifting, throwing, stuff like that. Ones that that everyone's going to need at some point or another. All in all, pretty solidly put together little book, and I like that it's up to date out of the box. That brings me great joy. So we already know that I think the game is going to be a lot of fun and offer a lot of really interesting storytelling moments that fit right within the realm of 90s, 2000s era wrestling. Let's talk turkey. So the starter box for this game clocks in at 45 pounds. That's 2 teams, the mat, the dice, the tokens, the rule book, everything you need. That is a ridiculous, I think that's probably like 50 to 55 American dollars. I have no idea what it would be anywhere else. Sorry. But somewhere in that range, that is a ridiculously good price for a legitimately playable out of the box game. The rule book alone by itself, 10 pounds. The teams, you get like 5-man box teams, 25 pounds, which is 30 to 35 American. Individual models range from 6 to 12. I mean, there's so many. There's so many guys. There's so many different wrestler models. I didn't realize how deep it went. I just had to look up the prices of things so that I could share that with all of you wonderful people. And I did not know how deep that rabbit hole went. TT Combat, how do you make so many models? Like, how do you guys do it? Because Carnival is like new models all the time, and then this game has got so many. It's insane, and I love it. I think this game is a banger. For the price point, even if the game's not a banger, it's worth giving it a shot. All of that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, hanging out, and letting me talk at you for a few minutes. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server, talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.